You're listening to our free podcast, The Screw Loose Juice. But this is just a taste. If you want the all-access pass to Rare Americans, then sign up for our fan club. For just $5 a month, you'll get never-seen-before music videos, guitar tutorials, articles written by the band, never-heard-before song demos, and hey, maybe even a little life advice that we've picked up along the way. Your $5 goes a long way in helping us make more music and videos to further reach people just like you all around the world. The link to sign up is on our website, rareamericans.com, and on our Instagram page, @rareamericans. Thanks so much for your support. Screw loose juice!
All right.
So, hello.
Here we are, Lubo, the
Again.
host of the podcast.
The host of the host.
The man with the hair.
The man with the hair and the man with the beer.
I have hair envy these days, so.
So who do we have here today, Jamesy?
We have Mr. Ben Kaplan,
Drinking beer.
Hello.
the man behind pretty much all of the Rare American songs, pretty much.
The majority, for sure.
Yeah, mass majority.
Yeah.
And it's been an honor and a pleasure.
Oh, likewise, I'm sure.
Yeah, we've learned a lot. And
Likewise.
we started from a very just a happenstance type of way. Like,
did.
I'll never forget that. For those of you who don't know the story, we were supposed to record our second record with the same guy who did the first one, Joe Ciccarelli. And I remember I was on a family vacation, and I was supposed to get back, and we had all the studio time booked, and we were perfect. We were all prepared. We were ready to go. And then I get a text from him that Joe is like, or his agent, I don't even think it was Joe. He's like, oh, shit, I got to finish up this record that Tom Petty had used to like. He used to like this artist, and they're recording at his residence, and yada, yada, yada. The label needs it now. I just can't make this happen. I was like, dude, we have this fucking studio time booked, man. It's paid for. We have 3 weeks of studio time. Like, what am I supposed to do here? Like, we're also, like, young. We're kind of rookies. We don't really know a lot of people either. So then I remember we put our heads together and like, fuck, is there anybody that we know? Do we literally know anybody else who records music? And then Jeff, who was with us at the time, was like, oh, Ben Kaplan. Did you teach him or?
No. I didn't teach Jeff, but I mixed. He had a band.
Was that Rend?
Yeah, that's
with,
what it
with
was.
CL.
With CL, yeah. And so I mixed a couple songs for them or something like that.
Gotcha.
So that's how we knew each other.
Yeah, and he was like, Ben's awesome, yada, yada, yada. Let me call him and see if this is a thing. And then I was like, oh, shit, okay. Thought it was very low chance.
And then I said, oh, shit. Oh, fuck. I got this Tom Petty thing. And oh, man.
So what
No,
was, when did Jeff call you? I think he called you, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, it must have been Jeff.
And you just happened to, had you ever heard of Rare Americans at that
No.
point? And so you were just like, who the fuck is this? Or you're playing
Yeah.
in some project.
Yeah.
Okay, I might be free.
We're going in next week for 3 weeks. Can you do it? And I was like, I could. And I knew Jeff, so and Jeff was awesome. So, I wasn't worried about it in that sense.
Yeah.
And then you guys sent me like a fucking million songs.
Of course we did.
As
2
usual.
million.
And yeah, and that was, and then I said yes right away because fuck it, let's go.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Then I remember.
Songs are cool, and yeah.
Yeah, then I think I called you, and I remember, like, I think it was in the Philippines or something. And so I remember, like, my parents were supposed to go eat lunch or go on some excursion or something. I'm like, God, I didn't think I'd be doing this. And I remember calling you and being like, so you want to do this shit or what? Like, you were like, let's do it. So I was like, all right. And then, yeah, I remember getting back from the trip and being, like, totally jet lagged. And I was like, all right, here we go. We loaded our shit. And we're like, here we are.
Yeah.
Cool. And that was at the warehouse in Vancouver.
Right down the street.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was good. Warehouse was awesome. I spent like when I first moved to Vancouver, I literally lived in that room for 2 years straight.
Right. It was
So-
clear that you knew it very well.
Oh, yeah.
Which was
yeah,
also good for us because I think, like, when you walked into the place, you were just like, you just knew what the fuck you were doing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so we were like, okay, He seems good. He seems like he knows what's up here. Like he knows his way around. He's talking to everybody. It seems like he's saying the right things. I feel like
I remember one thing, like when we were setting up the amps, and we were just like, we had the Joe Ciccarelli syndrome, like.
Oh yeah.
And
You
then,
made a joke
and then
too.
I remember Ben just like shut me off, like maybe I should fucking call Joe and ask him how to mic this fucking amp. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna shut up.
It
now.
probably would have been a good idea because Joe knows his way around a fucking studio.
Of course, but I just like remember going back. It's like, you know, when you're in a relationship with someone, you break
Yeah.
up and then you go into a different relationship, but you're still the same person as the first relationship. That's what we had.
Sure. Well, we walked into a blind date, right? Like,
Yeah.
Totally.
you know,
Yeah.
that was set up. You know, we didn't know. You know, it was literally a blind date, and we were,
Trying to make it
way
work.
past third base by the first day. You know what I mean?
So
Yeah.
what was your kind of like from your position? How do you not prepare, because you couldn't really prepare, but what are you
Well-
thinking like going into day one? Like,
Well, I had probably about a week or so, right? 10 days or something like
yeah,
that.
something like that.
Something like that. So I was able to go through the song. So when I do stuff like that, especially in that kind of fast, minimal amount of time, you just got to kind of figure out what the band's trying to do. So immediately I knew you guys were storytellers. I thought the music was super quirky and weird, in a good way, like unique, which was great. And I knew we could have a real fun time doing it because it wasn't just like cookie cutter shit. Like, some bands, I'm not going to name any names or anything like that, but some bands is very, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put an acoustic guitar in the chorus,
Sure,
and
yeah.
we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And it's very, almost straightforward. And I knew that wasn't what you guys were all about, given the demos, which were quite good, right? Because
Yeah. We spent a lot of time on them.
you guys spent a lot of time on those, so they did have a pretty good roadmap. So, and you guys have always had good demos. So it was fairly easy for me to, I don't know, kind of see the finish line in a way,
Right.
because you guys had already kind of laid it out in a way. Like some demos I get, man, are like terrible, right?
You would like rather not had it.
Like terrible.
So
Like there's no
I'm kind of
there's no
curious.
vision.
I'm kind of curious on like
Just a noise.
You guys, there was.
like
a
demos
degree.
in general. Like, do you prefer when bands come in with demos, or would you rather have like, hey, let's just hear the song totally acoustically, and then you can just formulate
Well-
the colors in your head as kind of you want to?
Yeah, it really depends on the artist, right?
Okay.
So you've got some artists, and as a producer, there's different ways to produce a record, right? So you've got artists that have a clear or some kind of a vision of where they want to go, and then you got some artists that have none whatsoever, right? Some artists really need you to hold their hand and help write and help come up with sounds and this, that, and the other, and then other artists have all that together but have no idea how to get from point A to point B in the studio, for example, right? So, and there's a whole
Gamut in between.
a whole gamut in between. So you have to figure out, what that artist needs, right? So which do I prefer? So, I mean, it's kind of nice to have a little bit of both, right? I think sometimes when I get artists that have no clue, it can be difficult and more work and not necessarily and doesn't necessarily work as well.
Do you find with like, because you've worked with obviously some of the biggest artists in the world, and then you've worked with people who are like brand new and just emerging. Do you find that typically, like, do you find a correlation between bigger, more experienced artists that typically means that they'll have better demos or have more vision, and it's the younger artists that are the ones that you're kind of like, oh, okay, this is all over the place? Or do really experienced artists also sometimes not really have anything figured out going into a record?
Yeah, I mean, most experienced artists have their shit together and have pretty good demos.
Okay.
But especially at this point, right? Because everybody, you can do so much at home right now. And I think over the last 3 years, everybody learned how to record pretty quick. You know what I mean?
And also, I've noticed that like the sound of like what's kind of popular is also, it's gone from like pristine recording is like
100%.
it's like gone. It's like people
Yeah.
are deliberately trying to
Yeah.
make these like loop soundy bedroom like sound like the guitar. You didn't know how to plug
Yeah.
it in, and like
50% of the plugins that you can buy now are made to make it sound shittier.
yeah. So
You
is
know what I
that,
mean?
is that weird for you? Because obviously like you come from such a background where you're a pro's pro. You just know everything about
Well,
how to make something pristine. Is it like, does it feel wrong, or is it
No,
like
no,
kind of
no.
re-energizing?
not
in
at
a
all.
way?
I because I think it's all about, it's like with you guys, it's not like we sat around and tried to get a kick drum sound for 2 days. You know what I mean? We just go.
Yeah.
There's certainly, we have the capability to make things sound great, but there was also times when it was like, we knew we were not trying to make it sound great, for lack of a better description,
that was
right?
like that was the North Star.
Totally, right? We were trying to go for unique, and unique is often not pristine and super clean or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And certainly these days, if you listen to, any popular music, it's not Steely Dan we're listening to anymore. Like, that's not happening. And even the majority of pop music, I mean, there's a lot of pop music that doesn't even hit a studio, like a full blown studio.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are just bouncing shit back and forth from their house and
Tour
recording
the road,
vocals at
right.
home, and the amount of stuff you can do in the box now is insane, right? Like, you hear a piano on a record, probably that's not a real piano. The chances are.
Does that bother you at all, and you'd still always rather record a piano, or you don't care and you just like
No,
making a song cool?
Yeah, no, it doesn't bother me at all. But sometimes I feel like, sometimes I yearn for like the old days when it was like you got 4 compressors and 4 EQs, and that's all you got, right? Not like a list of 1,000, different plugins, and it's almost too vast at this point.
Yeah, totally.
Sometimes I think to myself, like, oh man, it'd be nice to just not have to, like, oh, let's find a kick drum sample, and it's like, I literally have thousands and thousands, So part of me does yearn for the old days when there wasn't that vast amount. You had to kind of dig and work for it more in a way.
Yeah.
But it doesn't bother me. No, I mean it's all good.
Did you find like working with us from the first record up until now, kind of these batch of songs?
Yeah.
Did you find anything like what changed? Did anything change? Did your personal approach to things change at all? Did your skills change, or like the way that you approach records, just given the fact that now music can just be made on a laptop, and a lot of it is like, how would you say we've worked together now on so many songs?
Yeah.
Like, was there an evolution there in the way that you approach things?
Well, certainly, like I said, that first batch was the blind date, right?
Yeah.
So that's always the getting to know you phase. And then once we went into the next session, that was over, right? So everybody kind of knew what they were doing. So there's a comfort level that immediately, like, on day one, as soon as we get there, you have that comfort level, right?
Yeah.
So there's I think, which probably took a couple days on that first record at the warehouse, right? Just to kind of find our feet and learn everyone's, just get to know each other, right?
And process.
Totally.
Everybody's recording
Totally.
process
And
is
that,
so different.
Absolutely. And I remember on that first one, we were trying to figure out what the best way to get through it was, right?
Yeah.
Because as Lubo said, like, you had, Chicarelli does it one way and does that very well. And I'm sure he has many ways of doing it. And I've done records a million different ways, and you just have to figure out every session. And every session's like that, right? You just got to figure out how to get the record done in the most pleasing way, right?
And so, like, what would be the most challenging thing on that first blind date? I mean, except, like, let's say you get the vibe of the band, you get, the, whatever they ways of working, and then when you kind of know what to expect, what is, like, the cold shower, pretty much, like when you go in the session, you don't expect something. Like, was there something like that during the first recording, or was it?
Well, the first, I mean, not really. I mean,
or like, what would be the challenging moment, if you just like remember? Because I guess every band kind of
Well, I guess the challenging thing about it is is making sure that at the end of the day, when everything's said and done and mixed and mastered, that it is what your guys' vision was and is, right? Because it's not my record. I mean, I'm a part of it. But at the end of the day, if I make a record for somebody and there's a part of that record that, you know, maybe the artist doesn't love or something like that, I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. But they might and probably will.
Oh, for sure.
Because they'll hear that for the rest of their life. And every time that part comes along, they're going to remember that one part and hate it, right?
It's like kind of like getting a tattoo. It's like
Totally.
you get a tattoo and you have that shit fucking forever, and the artist is like, oh, I forgot I even worked on that. I did 14 other ones this week. It's just not as precious to me as your one tattoo that you have.
100%. So it's very important to me that at the end of the day, that is taken care of. And I think, you know, early on in one's career as an engineer or producer, you have to learn how to kind of let go of any ego of the process, right? Like, you know, I think the kick drum should sound like this. And then the artist is like, well, I think it should sound like that. Well, that should be kind of the end of the conversation. It's the artist's record. And if you want it to sound like that, well, God bless. Let's do it that way then. You know, there's things I'll fight for along the way, right? Like if I think that it's a wrong thing, I'll certainly make that.
Sometimes I found working with you a little bit, you'll have like, you'll be like, okay, cool, yeah, we can do that. And then secretly I know that you have all the ability like to be like, ha ha ha, little does he know, I have the ability to control all of these faders, and I can actually boost this one a little and turn that one down. And what we were just talking about, yes, you're right. And I kind of got also what I thought was the right move here, you know? And we probably wouldn't have even barely known.
But I mean, that's part of it though. You have to try everything, right?
Yeah.
So if you come to me and say, I think we should try doing this, and then Lubo says, I think that's a bad idea. It's like, well, no, we have to try it first in order to actually know. Right?
Yeah.
And
So there
you're
you go,
right. There
folks.
are
I
times.
usually say that's a bad idea.
Well, whatever. You know, it happens all the time, right? No, I don't think we should do that. I think we should. Okay, well, we can sit here and argue about it for 10 minutes.
It's
or
the same
we
as
just
like
bang it off.
every part of the process.
Yep.
Like even going through like these rehearsals right now, and when you're designing a show, it's like, okay, someone has an idea, you have to just try it because who knows if that could be the best idea or not, or work,
only
or
way to
somewhere
find
in
out,
between.
right?
And really, the only way to find out is just to try. And I feel like from the initial writing of a song to working on a record to the way you're all those decisions, it's so much of it is trial and error. You don't know until you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, going back to what you were saying, there's certainly situations where I can see, you know, a level of minutia that probably doesn't need to be focused on so much.
Yeah, and that's captain of the ship. That's kind of where you kind of have to be like
That's where you try and guide you guys to get through that moment so it doesn't take 2 hours of whatever.
Yeah, I think, me personally, I also feel like I'm sometimes in a position of trying to guide, I would say, the overall team on things and trying to push the pace on things for certain things. And I think that you and I can sometimes, there's not camera on us, but
Just rarely.
me and Lupo, sometimes that's where we can probably get into disagreements. Is you would like to take and dive into something for an extremely long time until you feel like
In your eyes, in mine,
just-
it's just like
it's just right. But there's like certainly a level of that you have to do until you get a great piece and something you're proud of. But also you are just up against, okay, we have to make a record. It's a finite amount of time to do this. It's also it's not cheap to make things at all, right?
Yeah.
Things are expensive and
But, you know, there's also, you know, something to be said about exploring and and experimenting and stuff like that. But, you know, I kind of subscribe to some kind of, and this is not a hard line rule, but you know, you kind of set an amount of time. Okay, let's take 10 or 15 minutes and see if we can flush this idea out. And if after 15 minutes it sucks, then fucking move on. Who cares? You know, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah,
we can always come back to it. Because I don't know about you guys, but I kind of feel like I could work on any record for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And it kind of get to a point that you know, there's an old saying that's you never really finish a record. What is it? You never really finish a record. You just abandon it. You know, like there comes a point. Because you know when you guys play live songs, right? So you do the record and you're like, oh, fuck, this is great. And then you start putting it together live and you're like, oh, this is kind of cool. Let's do it this way now. And then over time, like probably songs off your first record, right? Those songs are probably quite a bit of a departure from the way they used to be because they evolve,
to make them
right?
quite of a departure, yes, because it's boring to play it over and over at the same time.
Yeah.
But there is something to be said about like some people that gonna hear the song for the first time and it's not like to the point as it is on the recording. To me, you already have a CD, you have a Spotify, you can listen to that live. Yeah. You came to see us play the song, and I mean, like, if I toss an odd note here and there, just like you're gonna live with it till the rest of your life. I mean, this is just like my
it's like
I have to make
it's
on the stage.
It's an experience that you're trying to give them.
Yeah,
and then there's also like the going too far on that end where it's like you go to a Bob Dylan show. And, like, I know people who are, like, massive Bob Dylan fans, but they go to the show and they're like, fuck, man. Like, I didn't literally even recognize the fact that was like a Rolling Stone. This is now a 13-minute ballad that, like, is in a totally different melody and it had a few of the same lyrics or something. And you're just like, then there's also that side where you're just kind of like, I just didn't even get it.
Well, the famous story of Bob Dylan when he went electric, right? And the crowd was like, what in the fuck is this? And they booed him because that's not what they wanted, but he needed to evolve and move on. That's just the way it works.
Yeah. Totally.
So even when you're making a record, like, you know, I've done records that, I mean, have taken months and months and months, probably years.
Was that in the past way more than now?
Yes. Yes. But there's records that happen that way. And there's still, you know, records that happen that way. But there's also something to be said about going in and banging it out and living in the moment, right? And it's not to say either or is right or wrong. It's just a different process. And sometimes either one of those can be really rewarding and really great in the end.
For sure. Yeah. Did you think that Brittle Bones Nikki would be such a successful song? When you were working on it, did that song ever stand out to you at all?
No.
Do you know which one it was that you said it'll be successful on?
Yeah, I was thinking more like Missing Targets or something like that.
He remembers that.
Good memory.
I just told to James that I saw the footage that Omar, the guy that was filming,
he
did an interview with you, and you said on video that you think that Missing Target is the one.
Yeah, totally. Because it's I mean, even now, like your catalog of songs, you've got songs that are a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit. Brittle Bones Nikki was not a song that stuck out to me as being an accessible song. In other words, a song that lots of people would like.
Totally.
It was a song that your fans would like, right?
We didn't have that many fans then.
No.
That song made us all our fans, which is
I know.
No, but I think I
checked
said
your
the same
numbers.
thing on on this last batch that we did. There was, I forget which one it was.
Said Money and 2 U's. You called
but there was a song or two that I was like, look, I think your fans are gonna really like these songs, but this song and that's the way I've always kind of thought about your songs, because you've got quite a cross section of.
You definitely called Baggage on the Rare Americans 3.
Right.
You called that from the beginning.
Right. So that's
which is
exactly
now actually just as of last month is taken over Brittle Bones Nikki. It's the top song.
Oh really?
Yeah.
You're kidding?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
First time ever.
Okay, so that's a really good example, right? So Baggage is, to me, a very accessible song. It's got a really catchy chorus. It's really easy to sing along to, and that is typically what, popular songs.
Yeah, 9 out of 10
have.
people, they want things that are pleasing to the ear and
Easy to sing along to.
for sure. Yeah.
Easy to sing along to. I remember a friend of mine was, his wife and him were talking about, songwriting and stuff, and they were listening to a song, and he said something like, "Oh, isn't that a clever chord progression? It goes from the 2 to the 6 to the 1 or whatever." And she kind of looked at him and she's like, "I don't give a shit about that. I just want to be able to sing along to it."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's pretty much 99% of, people that consume music, that is what they want." So you take a song like Baggage, or in the case of that first batch with Missing Targets, I thought that one was one that was quite easily accessible, but Brittle Bones Nikki was quirky and cool, but not necessarily, and maybe that's exactly why it was, why it turned out that way.
Which is the weirdest thing about songwriting, because then you're just like, fuck, you write these like songs like Moving On, which I think is a really good song. I like that song a lot, and I would say it's more like baggage. It's easy to sing, it's easy to listen to, it's pleasing to the ear. But then you're like, okay, well, should we just try to make the weirdest songs possible? And is that what people, because there's so many other people in this other lane now that it's just constant noise, people trying to pump out like pop kind of songs that you're like, how do you break through that,
Well, that's an interesting point, right? So, historically speaking, going back 20 years before YouTube and all the media that's coming at you now, it was all radio driven, and very much radio was driven by songs you can sing along to.
Right.
And there's so many other avenues and ways to consume music now that it's, there's no rules anymore.
For sure. Still seems to me though that like, I mean, we talk about this shit every day, but like it still seems to me like radio is still, if you can get on the radio, it's huge.
100%.
Like you're just making fans real quickly. Like
a
really good example of that is like the Beaches. I don't know if you know them. Those
100%.
The girls from
they're
Toronto.
fantastic.
They're great live. We saw them play. They're awesome. But they don't stream like extremely well. That's not their bread and butter, but they're getting mad radio play in Canada.
Right.
And they just sold out 2 nights in a row at History in Toronto, which is like 1,400 cap or something. Like, that's just like, that's huge. It's almost like if you can get on radio, it's like quick amount of sales, like quick amount of hard tickets.
Yeah. Well, they write great songs.
Yeah.
They put on a great show.
For sure.
I mean, I guess in the end, that's really what we're talking about, right?
Missing one of those, right?
So then you saw the live show before we went on the road to the UK. What were your thoughts, like the honest thoughts?
Oh, the one like at the Fox.
That was like so long ago.
I know, exactly.
How did I don't even remember that.
Well,
I don't think that even counts. I mean, that was.
Oh, so it was bad, eh?
It was not bad, but it's a far cry from where you guys are at now. But like, naturally, I mean, that was years and years and years
ago. But you
ago.
haven't seen us recently, right? Like
No, other than Instagram and stuff like that.
Right.
But I can see what you guys have done. So the difference between then and now. Now, back then though, you still did a pretty good job of putting a show together. And these days, as you know, it's a lot. You can't just stand up there and play your songs and expect people to go gaga over you. Okay. Those days are kind of gone. You have to be entertainers. And you guys know that.
It's like an experience, yeah.
It is, yeah. So even back then with what I would say would be limited resources compared to what you have now, you guys still knew that and were trying to make that happen. So you guys had the visuals and you had kind of a more than just playing the songs. So it wasn't that it was a bad show or anything like that. It was just kind of like, okay, now these, it was the beginning of where you guys were going to.
Right. And then when the producer like yourself go to see a band, like what do you look for? Like
band that I don't know?
Yeah, or maybe the band that you know, but you kind of
or someone's like, hey, this band might be interested in working with you. Like that probably happened a little bit more in the past, probably, right? Where you might go to a show and check them out.
Yeah, here's a good example. Many years ago, a friend of mine said, hey, I'm going to see this band. They're good friends of mine. And then as well, the label had called me and said, hey, this band's playing. They're fantastic. You got to come see them. So both my friend he went to college with him or something like that. And then the label who I had worked with before both said so. I was like, okay. And then we went and it was like, okay, everybody's here. So something's going on. So there's buzz going on. And within like 2 minutes of the first song of these guys, I was like fucking blown away. And I knew these guys were fucking awesome.
Are you going to tell us who it was?
I will in a second.
Now that we're all on eggshells here.
I will in a second. And then the next day, so I said to my buddy, I was like, okay, what's going on? Are these guys off tomorrow? Let's get these guys in. And, are you doing some recording? Yeah, I think we're going to do some recording. Okay, I'll fucking help you with whatever. Let's just get these guys in and try and bang some stuff off. It was Half Moon Run.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Who's gone on to be very successful. Joe Ciccarelli, I believe, did a record with them as well.
Yeah.
Killer band. So, and I mean, that doesn't happen that often though, where it's just immediate, right?
Did you work with him?
No, we did some demos. What I would best describe them as demos. So, it was like a Saturday night or something. And then Sunday, a buddy of mine kind of tag teamed between our two studios and just kind of banged off something. This is before they even did their first record kind of thing.
Because they did that record with Nigel, right?
Yeah, it was Nigel.
Oh, okay.
So Nigel called me and said, you got to see this band, the friends, blah, blah, blah. So about halfway through the set, I was like, okay, Nigel, what are you doing tomorrow? Let's bang off some stuff. And then, so we did a bunch of demos. I still have them somewhere.
Cool.
And then Nigel did go on to do that record, yeah.
What's a record that, like, in your career that was like that stands out to you as just like it was unbelievable? It was like just an incredible experience. Or
that I've worked on?
Yeah. Do you have any that really stand out to you? Like you felt like you were really making something special when you were doing it?
There's been a few. I suppose the most notable one was the Biffy Clyro record called Puzzle, which was the first one we did with those guys. And
where did you record it?
We did that at the warehouse and then up at Garth's place at the farm, the first incarnation of the farm. So the reason those guys are killer no matter what. I mean, those guys, they're kind of like you guys. They just pump out, they write songs like for every record, there's got to be, 40 or 50 songs to choose from. So lots of songwriting. That one in particular was very, very intense because he had just lost his mom. And the better part of the record was about that. So lyrically and just everything about that revolved around that. And if you really listen to the lyrics, it was just
like gut-wrenching.
Just gut-wrenching. Yeah. Just gut-wrenching. And sometimes you listen to songs and you don't really listen to the lyrics, right? You're just drawn to the whole picture, right? And then one day you start listening, and you're like, oh, fuck, they're actually talking about, whatever. Sure. So with that particular record, it was the same kind of thing. Listening, oh, fuck, these are great songs. And then you start listening to what he's actually talking about. And then once I clued into that, it was one of those moments where it was like, I remember, what was that one song? I can't remember the title off the top of my head, but the lyric was, I'm not savoring life, I'm falling apart, something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember at that having a moment where I was like, holy shit, that is so intense. And I could feel I could still feel myself starting to well up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I thought that was, all things considered, I thought that was a really, special moment and special record. And even today when I listen to that record and certain songs in particular, I think it's just,
2007,
incredible.
Biffy Clyro
Puzzle? Yeah, that's about right when it came out. So we would have done it in 2005 or so.
I must say that a friend of mine really likes the band.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he just it's a friend from university,
Mm-hmm.
and for 2 years it was like, you need to listen to Biffy Clyro. You need to listen to Biffy Clyro.
Yeah.
It was like Biffy Clyro all the time. And then when we got to work with you, James sent me the Mother bands.
Mm.
And then he said that, and some Biffy Clyro, I don't know the band.
Yeah, I didn't
Some
know.
guy named Biffy Clyro.
I didn't know Biffy
I was
Clyro.
like, okay, this is getting intense. I'm gonna record guitars with the guy that did the Biffy Clyro. I better listen to that because the friend of mine from university, he's like a prog rock, prog metal guy. He just he wouldn't listen to Madonna, right, or whatever.
Right.
At that time, now he does. But so I was like, okay, Biffy Clyro, and then I really got into the band. I was like, this is really good.
Well,
And
what's cool
Mother
about
as well,
those
right?
guys too is they're not they're quirky and cool and they don't fit inside the box. They are way outside the box for a popular rock band, right? they've got the kind of Foo Fighters rock, integrity, but do some really wacky stuff at the same time, which, kind of like you guys can do all that, but you have this kind of unique and wacky side that people really are drawn to. And I think that's one thing that worked really well for Biffy. And the other thing that worked really well for Biffy that you guys do as well is those guys, and this is going back to 2005 and beyond, they would pump out content, right? So they would do a record and then they would do 3 EPs.
Okay.
And then they do another record and 3 EPs, and they would just it would just keep on coming. And I think and so you guys have been doing the same, just start pumping out the stuff. Like, let's write it and let's get it out. Let's go. And especially in today's market, that's what you have to do. And I think they were way ahead of the curve on that. And that was one thing that really propelled those guys early on.
I hope the curves are coming back from past and we're hitting the curve
Sweet
now.
spot again.
Like
We did open up for them, right?
we did
We
not.
played the same festival. They were headlining.
Biffy
you did?
Clyro?
Rock for People. They were.
No.
Oh, yeah.
We
Where
open up for Dua Lipa too. Well,
Yes.
Biffy Clyro? Rock for
Clyro,
People?
they were headlining.
No, Imagine Dragons. Oh no.
No, that was Pink Pop.
No, that was the. What's that?
Rock for People was the one that we were way out there in like the.
I know, but like, what was the band
Fall
that
Out
was
Boy.
in there?
Yeah,
Fall Out Boy.
on
Out
our
Boy.
day, but yeah, they were headlining.
Oh,
one
the
of
day
nights.
before. Yeah, right.
Fallout Boy. Oh,
Have you worked with Fall Out Boy?
I have not.
Would you like to?
they weren't so
Sure,
good.
yeah, why not?
Why? It's a podcast. Aren't you supposed to be as fucking
Yeah,
shit
man.
talk as
Yeah.
much as humanly
Do
possible?
you think
as
they're
like-
listening to this
Yeah,
right now?
Isn't that
or-
the only way people are interested in anything these days?
Probably will not listen.
You know what?
Pete, I'd love to work with you.
I wouldn't want to you don't shit talk people who are genuinely doing their best, but I genuinely didn't think that he was doing his best. Like, he literally was like, Prague, what's up? It's like, you're not in Prague. You're literally 3 hours away from Prague. Like, you're not even close to Prague. And you don't even say Prague. It's Praha, isn't it? It's just like,
There you
everything
go.
about it was just like, he just did not do his homework for where he was. And it was so obvious to the whole crowd that everybody was just like, it was like that cringe kind of moment where like everybody felt it. And you're like,
Except
oh no, he's talking again. He's going deeper in the hole. Oh shit, what's he gonna say now? And we're all looking at each other like,
Oh,
there's no coming back from this. Like, and then sure enough, he just went deeper and deeper. It was like, he did have a flamethrower on his base. Yeah.
It was
Made up
no,
for it in
it was no
theatrics.
Rammstein, but he got a flamethrower.
Right.
How do you this is maybe totally different, but like 2 questions on this. How do you find that you've been in the music industry for a really long time? Like, how has it changed? Like, what are the biggest things that you've seen change?
So, that's a big one because there's a lot that's changed. Because I've seen the industry actually shit the bed twice, and
Walk
I've
us
been
through it. I'm so fascinated about this.
it's been about 25 years for me, right, where I've been doing it professionally. So the first time was Napster, and to put that all in one word, Napster, and that whole thing. That was a complete reshuffling of everything, right?
Yeah, Metallica was really against Napster.
Yeah, sure. And
so you were working on records prior to that.
Yes.
And so walk me through those days. Like,
Okay, so in those days, so what's different today compared to 20, 25 years ago is you had CDs, you had tapes, you had vinyls. These made a lot of money.
Right.
A lot of money. So when streaming became the thing, before streaming, like peer-to-peer stuff, so Napster and that stuff, when that started to kick off and really hit, all of a sudden, all that revenue disappeared. And it was fast. Wasn't overnight, but it was pretty fast.
Yeah.
So we went from, doing, what we would call baby bands, which was, bands that nobody had ever heard of. And in the old days, you go see a band and you're like, oh, these guys are really great. We got to work with these guys and develop them. We're going to develop these bands.
like as an independent producer, or would they have already been on a label?
Or label. No,
Yeah.
maybe not.
Okay.
But either way, labels were more inclined to sign a band that they thought were good or that they thought were cool.
Even though if they had
with
no
no
following,
audience.
nothing. Yeah.
No audience.
Yeah.
or at least no audience.
They would
certainly.
spend money to develop them.
That's right. So when you signed a record deal, it was like a 3 to 5er. So right, you'd sign for maybe 3 albums with a couple options or something like that, which meant that you were going to do one record and then see how that goes, and then you were going to do another one, and then you were going to do another one, and then kind of evaluate how things are going. And then you have a couple options whether you're going to continue on. That doesn't happen today, right? There's no development. You need to have your audience right away.
Totally.
So in those days, you could, expect to have a pretty big budget to make a record with a band that nobody has ever heard of.
Like what kind of budget?
Anywhere from 75 to 100,000 plus.
Yeah.
That was.
And now that would be like a pretty good sized budget.
I mean, per record.
Per record, yeah. So it was.
Wow.
Yeah, because we would go into, like I said, like we would go into the warehouse, and I was literally there for 2 years straight just making records with some bands like that, right? So you might spend 2 months in a big studio making a record, 3 months, whatever, with a band that you've never heard of.
But for reference, $75,000 would still buy you 3 months at warehouse.
Yeah, but these days, that is a pretty big budget for a band that nobody's ever heard of.
Totally. That seems so huge. Like, why
Especially
would you,
like if you factor in inflation with it, it's like that's a huge
why
budget.
would you need
Yeah.
$75,000?
Studio time.
Well, probably
is one thing.
because they were working on records for 3 months.
But you also have to remember back then, there wasn't, if you had a home studio, that home studio was pretty fucking elaborate. It wasn't like a laptop and an Apollo Twin. Those weren't available. So there wasn't really home studios back then. So it was a very, if
you didn't need a lot of money for a home studio.
you needed to work in a studio
Yeah.
to make a record. That was kind of, that was it.
Yeah.
There was
So
no.
were there a lot more studios around then as
Yep,
well?
100%. 100%. And so what ended up happening during that time, during that transition, was a studio, which at that time was a pretty lucrative business, or at least you could make money at it, right? And it became more and more difficult to make money as a studio owner. So, and then as the budget shrank, then people wanted to use studios less, right? So studios were started to have a hard time, and then producers and engineers started to build their own studios, because at least the ones that had the foresight of what the future looked like, it was like, we better build a studio so that we can work, not so that we can make money as a studio owner, right? So that was kind of a shift. And the guy that I was working at, that's exactly what he did. He's like, okay, we need to build a studio because these budgets are disappearing very fast. So
what happened in that like little in between period? Because when Napster, and that would have been like late 90s, early 2000s, right? But
it was early 2000s, yeah.
Yeah, but we're still not at Spotify streaming or whatever, which was, only in the last, 7 years kind of
Yeah.
thing. So what was like that in between period then of like the early 2000s once these things came online, but there was no revenue stream from streaming really. It was just all pirated.
No. So, I mean, I suppose there was still... So, record deals started to change, okay? So, record deals started to change from... they introduced what was called the 360 deal, which meant...
You get a piece of
These are real
everything.
broad strokes here,
Yeah.
which basically meant that they get a piece of everything.
Yeah.
Whereas before, like, there was
So that was or 360 deals were as early as the early 2000s.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was a little later than that.
Well, that was
the change, yeah.
part of the whole shift, right? So there was bands that weren't necessarily, like, I knew there was a few bands I was working with that didn't do that.
I guess
because
for people
they were
who
in
also
existing deals.
who don't know what a 360 deal is, it's surprising. One thing I find like about the music industry, I was at like a cousins reunion this past weekend, and like
Yeah.
my cousins are very educated, smart people. Some are business owners, some are PhDs. You talk about the music business, it's like they literally don't know anything about it. So they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god!" So like
Yeah.
the idea of like a 360
Why do you
deal
do that?
was essentially like these labels, like they had the pillar of physical sales from vinyl, CDs, and tapes, I guess. I'm sure tapes would have gone obsolete earlier, but
Sure.
they were making so much money from this pillar of the business, and then all of a sudden you chop that pillar out, And they're like, holy shit, man, how do we make up for this?
Yeah.
Okay, well, the only thing that we can do is to take a piece. It's only fair. We take a piece of absolutely every single thing that artist does, from touring to merchandise to endorsement deals to any way that they can monetize themselves. We're going to take a piece of that. So then artists all of a sudden were like, well, okay, we're broke. We have
What
no
else are we
money.
gonna
We
do?
have no exposure. We have no marketing money. We can't do anything. So all cards are stacked against them. So they're like, okay, we'll sign these 360 deals.
Yeah.
And then now, spring forward to today, there's still 360 deals, but streaming has more revenue in streaming than the CD physical pillar business ever did. And the artists now are even more fucked than they ever have been in their entire life. So what I'm curious about is like, is there gonna come a point where something has to change? But on the flip side of that, it's still these artists have no money. They're artists. They're scrounging to get by, and what can they do, you know?
Well, it's an interesting thing because, and I've noticed this about a lot of young artists coming up. It's almost as if they don't know any different, right? So some of the old farts like me are like, back in my day, we used to get taken to Tojo's for dinner, and
You're getting steak and shrimps. And
Totally. So, I mean, on one hand, it's like any business, right? Businesses evolve, and you got to change with the times. And if you don't, you're going to get left in the woods. But there is that part of me that knows the way it used to be, and does have a certain, kind of, not necessarily. I don't have necessarily a romantic kind of memory of it, but it's like there's value to it. There's value to music. There's value to time. There's value to creativity. And I think it's hard for younger artists that have never paid for a CD, have never paid for a product. And sometimes that can be a disservice to them, right? So they might make a record, they might get a deal and say, oh yeah, we're going to get $10 for this. And they're going to, put our record out and we'll be like semi-famous on TikTok and that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, sure.
And, they don't know any different, right? So part of me feels like, oh man, I feel bad for you guys. But then there's also that flip side of me that says, but these guys are willing to fucking do anything to make it happen, which you also need.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a little bit of a balancing act, and I have kind of mixed emotions about the whole thing. I like streaming. I think it's obviously the future. I think it's so convenient. People consume more than they ever have. But there is part of me that's like, fuck, but man, like, you guys would have made so much money back in the day.
Totally.
So, but that's the evolution of business, right? Like automation and,
The
and
thing
other,
I just,
and other
I
things.
just can't wrap my head around is how, like, astute you have to be as an artist totally outside of music
Right.
to have any fighting chance. Like,
Yeah.
like I feel like we work on this stuff collectively every single day, and I
Yeah.
feel like we have some smart people in the crew, and like every single day it's just like we're coming up with things that we didn't know. We're like, okay, we're crunching analytics to try to figure out patterns for this and that. We're trying to come up with the latest, greatest marketing campaign. I feel like I'm up against like the greatest marketers on earth or something. It's like, unfortunately for us, it's like we're not launching one computer a year or something. It's like, okay, now it's pre-saves. All right, we got to do these fucking stupid pre-saves that every artist in the world is just whoring themselves for, including the very top artists. Like, we've been following Macklemore in his kind of comeback right now, and like, I can't even believe how much this guy is pimping pre-saves. And it shocks me because he's like an independent artist who kind of like was one of the only guys in history to do this independently. And so he made a fortune. Right. But he's back, and he's like, pre-save, 2 tickets, pre-save. I'll do this. I'm going to dance for a pre-save. It's just like, it's so weird to me. And like every single artist is doing it. And it's like, No one likes to pre-save.
Yeah, totally.
Name a person who's like, I love pre-saving songs. It's like,
What are you doing right now? Pre-saving.
oh
Yeah.
my God. It's like, it's just become this new currency of like, a way to play the game kind of thing. And it's just, it just sucks. Like,
To me, it looks like the shame is gone. Like whatever the top of a food chain does, everybody goes down, jump around, shake left leg, everybody shake. It's just like so dumb. There's the only word I find for just like whatever the people on top do, it's just like originality is gone. Like you want to be original, just copy whatever has been done. It's working. Like don't try to reinvent the wheel. Just like copy it.
If I can age myself just a little bit, when I used to play in bands, what we used to get pissed off about is who's gonna go put the posters on the fucking telephone poles in the rain.
Yeah.
Oh fuck! It's raining though. So fucking get out there, man. At least now you can sit at home and just.
But no, but to me, just like we saw that jump around thingy in the sound check, and then what was it? The grandson sound checking in a whatever empty venue, and then he jumps around and turns around, and there's the people. Imagine overcutting in the video, right?
Yeah.
Everybody does it.
It's like, I almost
wait.
I
Then you go for a
understand that
show. Everybody go down. Like I go to a show and I know they'll have to go down. To me, just it's boring. Like for myself personally, I just like anytime that happens, it's like pain in the ass. Like this is all you guys can come up with.
You're like in your young 30s though. Like I think if you're a kid who's 14 and who's only been to one concert or this is their first ever, it's like
That's true.
that one to me is like it's like a cheap trick that
Exactly,
it's
a
gonna
cheap
work.
trick.
It's gonna work for another 30 years and like sure is it the greatest thing on earth? No, but does everybody kind of have a good time when you do it? It's like
everybody does it.
That's good.
Guitar solo, everybody does it. Like
It does, but everybody plays slightly different notes. But everybody is just like, go low.
That's because when you get to our age, you're like, oh fuck, I gotta. Oh god, not this again.
No, but I think we are in an era where we have the most original music existing because everybody can record it. Everybody has access to anything. So you have so much music in the world, never before.
Yeah.
So Spotify has 6 million artists or whatever, 8 million or something like that. But the mainstream is getting narrower and more boring, and I feel like the mainstream music sounds the same. That's what we talked about with Lubo every day, that you listen to the best of alt rock of 2021 and every song is pretty much sounds the same. You can just like, it's a formula or it feels like a formula. It just like,
because like back in the day, it feels like you had all those different bands that have different sounds, and it's just like sound. I mean, they might play the same genre,
But you know what?
Like
It's a funny
different.
thing though, because 20 years ago, we were all saying the same shit.
yeah, that's funny. There you go.
No way. How,
There you go.
Like,
You know?
What do you mean?
Well, we were saying the exact same thing. You know, the fucking the music of yesteryear was fucking
Creative and
it
it
was
was
creative and
different.
had substance. These days, it's all the same shit.
We're gonna be saying that in
look back at
40
the
years.
90s and thinking,
And in
oh, that
20
was-
years, our kids are gonna be doing the same. You know, it's the same thing. But you know, I don't know if that's necessarily true though. I mean, there's some really, really great shit out there that is popular and that is pop music.
I don't disagree.
I think Dua Lipa is fucking awesome.
we saw her.
Yes, I know.
Not in person.
I think her production is awesome. I think her fucking songs are great. There's certainly like, you know, there's always an element of pop music that's very cookie cutter, and you know, there's always that, you know, you go back to the Beatles, right? The Beatles hit, and then everybody else is British bands and the British invasion, right? And that shit will always happen.
Yeah, like I think Billie Eilish had a huge impact on young
100%.
artists. Like I was listening to Gail or whatever, that A B C D E fuck you and your dog, whatever.
Yeah.
That song anyway, and she put a new song today, so I was listening to it, and then it was on like the playlist of songs like this, and it's just one after the other after the other after the other. That's like trying to do what Billie Eilish did 5 years ago.
Billie Eilish is another great example.
Now you're just trying to like chase a trend that's gone.
Yeah.
And you can't the minute you try to do that, you're already in the past. Like, I just
Yeah.
don't think you can do that. That's where I thought Julian Casablancas said really well from the Strokes when they were making that first record, Is This It?, which was a smash. He was like, I want to sound absolutely nothing like that's on the radio. I want to sound the exact opposite of what that is. And by doing that, they just happen to be a very talented band, and he's a talented songwriter. But by doing that, he created a Billie Eilish effect.
Mhm.
And then everybody else was trying to distort their vocals like him, and they were trying to chase him for 5 years,
Yeah.
you know?
I worked with a couple bands that was their MO, was to listen to whatever was hot and jump on it as fast as possible. So if it was like piano ballads, okay, piano ballads, we got to do a piano ballad. Like, okay, this is the sound from a, Juno 106. We got to get that in there. And it was very very on purpose, and that was their MO, and it worked for them.
Interesting.
It did work.
That's like you almost
It
have
totally
to be
worked.
so timely.
They
on
were
that,
very,
right?
very popular and did very, very well. I won't say who it was, but,
Sure.
and then, I remember working with one artist, and he was like, we were having a meeting about working together, and he's like, okay, well, I think this will work, or, I think you're cool, blah, 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 whatever. He's like, so I guess the one thing I got to ask you is, are you going to be able to get me on the radio? And I was like, I don't fucking know, man.
It's not my job, bro.
Like, I was like, okay, we're going, here's what I can tell you. We're going to, whatever we put together is going to be the greatest thing that we can put together. And it's going to be great. It's going to sound great. It's going to be your best work. It's going to be my best work, blah, 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 blah. But past that, who fucking knows
Totally.
whether we can get on the radio. And the thing is, I think if you spend too much time focusing on getting on the radio or being successful, and not necessarily being true to your art form or true to your vision, or however you look at it, that's the stuff that really translates, right? And I think maybe that's part of why Brittle Bones Nicky was a thing, because there wasn't really a concern of, okay, this is going to be huge. That wasn't it. But how are we going to make this cool? How are we going to make this fun and exciting, right? And I think that's what translates into artists. I remember when I was working with Ryan from Mother, he said, before we did Dance and Cry, he said, he's like, look, man, I've done, the pop thing. I've been kind of pushed to make songs that I didn't necessarily like, pushed to make radio
Because he kind of
songs.
got a taste of radio.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they've always become more and more successful.
Yeah.
But there was a time when he was getting a bit of a push to write radio hits.
Right.
And he didn't like it, first of all, and he didn't really even like the process or even the songs necessarily. And he said to me, he's like I'm not gonna fucking do that, because I just want to write songs that in 20 years I look back and I'm happy to listen to, I like. And then it turned out that, in that particular record at that time, that ended up, being his most successful record. Then, then the next thing that happens is the record that he recorded 15 years ago with no illusions of grandeur getting on the radio becomes the biggest fucking song in,
Crazy, yeah.
in the world of TikTok, and things blow up.
I met him for the first time at Pink Pop, or that festival we were
Yeah.
at, and which is funny because I was like, dude, I literally have seen you walk past my house like probably 50 times.
He lives like
yeah,
right
he
around the
lives
corner.
like right there. I was
Yeah,
like, we've literally walked past each other so many times.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, nice to meet you, But he was saying the same thing. He's like, when he was younger, he had the naivety of he just wrote songs that he thought were cool, and then they got a taste of radio, and then he starts writing for radio.
Yeah.
Because he's like, okay, we got a taste of this. It works. We're getting some more popularity. So I'm deliberately, I think he spent probably a portion of his career really going for that and doing that. And then now he said, I'm at this point where I'm like, then we had this whole TikTok thing. We're bigger than we've ever been. But he's like, I'm almost trying to go back to like that kid who just didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
And just trying to put myself in those shoes of just being that naive writer who just kind of did what I did and I liked what I liked. But I'm like fighting 20 years here of 15 years of experience of like, it's hard for me to forget all these things. So even when I am trying to be that kid, it's like, I can't not hear the little birdies about like, is this chorus? Does it pop? Does it like, is this gonna be on the radio? Like, what song's the single, etc. Like,
Yeah.
it's weird, but that's like the gift and the curse of experience, I guess.
It is,
Absolutely.
but then I'll catch you back on that Brilliant Sneaky thing versus Baggage, right? The Brilliant Sneaky kind of weird and quirky and shoots over, and Baggage straightforward, a verse, chorus, a bridge, whatever, very
Yeah.
sing-alongy, and it's overpissing Brilliant Sneaky now. So it just they both kind of work. Just you never know which one's gonna work
I think-
first.
But I think if you statistically, which is my job to look at, statistically, I think weirder songs work better in general. Like, for example, if you look at our top 10, you got like Rhythm Kitchen, you have Hullabaloo, you have Gas Mask, Milk, stuff that's, I wouldn't say as accessible. Not saying it's avant-garde jazz, but still.
Rhythm Kitchen though is like, I found this. I used to think that too. And then once we played it on the tour back to back with Baggage, I was like, these songs are actually very similar in structure. I was like, okay, we have a verse, a chorus, we got another verse, we got a chorus, we got a bridge, and we got a slightly different altered chorus. It's like, so
Right.
once we played them and we played them back to back, I was like, I kind of feel like I'm playing the same song, even though they're different.
Brilliant Sneaky has a similar form. They're like a verse, chorus, verse, chorus.
No, it's got
bridge.
kind of 4 verses, right? They're
Yeah, the third verse is sure, but I think like I was just talking about like Rhythm Kitchen is definitely not a super radio song. It has like it's a little bit weirder than Baggage, right?
Sure.
It's probably more closer.
It's less singy songy.
yeah.
And,
Yeah.
And Full Moon, for example, is one of the songs that is not was not never supported by any marketing money. It was just released on an album, but it's our top 10 song or top 11.
Oh yeah.
You said that going into the record. You said your fans are really gonna like this song.
Oh,
I don't
yeah?
know, you just said I don't know if this is gonna be like gain you a lot of new fans, but you said your fans are gonna really like this song.
Yeah, they do. So it's but it's hard to analyze these things. It's
It is,
Hey
yeah.
Sunshine is doing good. Moving On is not doing good. So I don't know. It's
You just gotta do what you do and be as genuine as you possibly can about it. And
Absolutely.
nothing
I
wrong
think
with a pop
that's
song, nothing wrong with a quirky song. Just
I think that's what translates the most is being genuine and just being true to yourself, and the rest will follow. It goes with anything though, right?
for sure.
That goes with anything. Any business, any endeavor you're in, I think the truer you are to yourself and, without placing too much weight on pleasing other people per se, translates.
For sure.
And I think people pick up on that,
Yeah, it's like I remember that was something Joe Ciccarelli said. He was
Yeah.
like, I have to believe you.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't believe you, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
And once I believe you, then I'm like, okay, this can be whatever.
Right.
This is great, but at least it has conviction, and at least it has, you can sink your teeth into the fact that at least you sound like you believe it. But if you don't sound like you believe it,
Yeah.
who the fuck else is gonna believe it?
It's great advice.
Do you like
100%.
the music business?
Yeah, yes and no. It's tough, man. Like, it's not I mean, I love it and I hate it. So the things I love about it are obviously being creative. I don't really know what else I would do. I love the ability to. I mean, I guess it all boils down to that creative, because I was in bands for years, so this is still my creative outlet that I still need to get out. So I do love that part of it. The business part of it can be tough. It's not the most stable business in the world. It's not the most, especially when I remember when I was in school, I was like, all right, how many of you have girlfriends? And I went to recording school. They're like, all right, well, if you want to continue in this business, you can just kiss those girls goodbye. How many of you want kids? Oh, I do. Well, you can just give up on that right now. It's that kind of vibe, right? And of course, I have a wife and 3 children. And it's difficult, man, because it's not like, I have friends of mine who are, they have, set hours, they have vacation pay, they have, benefits and salaries and stuff like that. And when you have kids and a family, those are things that are very important.
For sure.
And certainly that aspect of it is difficult. The instability of it, that kind of gig vibe. So it is tough, but when you do get somewhat successful, it is very rewarding, especially as an artist. That keeps you going, right? And I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know what else I would do. I've had like kind of bad months and, along peaks and valleys, especially over COVID, right?
For sure.
It was like, all right, well, if this isn't going to work out, what the fuck am I going to do? Like, really, what am I going to do?
Where do you see yourself if this doesn't work out?
See yourself in 10 years.
Yeah, that's the
like-
kind of thing you ask a musician, and you're like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? So like, well, maybe we can just talk about tomorrow. Like, I don't know. We can talk about lunch tomorrow. Yeah, it's hard. It's definitely hard. So there's a love-hate relationship. That definitely, for sure. I have a friend of mine who his main business is not the music business, but it's more like his hobby, and he kind of, he makes his bread and butter in another very lucrative business. But he loves playing music, and he tours a little bit and whatnot. And when he actually got into the music business, I remember coming up to me going, "This is fucking crazy." Like,
That's what my brother says.
this whole thing is fucking crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and I get that, but I don't know, for me and a lot of the guys that I've come up with, it's just what we do, and like I was saying to you before about some of the kids coming up that don't know any different and that are hungry and willing to do anything to get a break. You kind of have to keep that mentality going, even if you're an old fucker like me, or you will get lost in the dust.
How do you keep that up? Or do you just naturally have it?
I don't know. I think it's a little bit natural, a little bit is foolishness, a little bit is it's passion is what it is, right?
You still have a passion after all those years.
Totally, yeah.
That's very. I'm not sure if it's inspiring or interesting.
It's a little bit of both. Like I said, a little bit of foolishness, a little bit of.
Is it weird or is it?
Do you face like burnout ever? Or are those things that happen too much?
The only time I get I start to feel that kind of way is when I start doing the same thing over and over again. But because I produce, I mix, I engineer, I kind of do a lot of different things. I've been lucky that I don't really get that too often. So there's times where I'm just mixing for 3 months or something like that. And then, somebody wants to make a record, and I was like, oh, yeah, fuck recording drums. Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas, or same thing, the other thing that I've been lucky at is I've never really been too pigeonholed in one particular genre. Early on, I did a lot of metal records. A lot of metal records.
Yeah.
And I remember getting to a point where I was like, okay, this is a lot of fun. And I was never a metal guy. I love making metal records, though, but I was never like a metal fan per se.
It is interesting.
But I was never really into metal.
It's like really liking baking cakes, but you prefer, I don't know, croissant.
I
or
like
something.
baking cakes, but I don't like eating them that much.
It's like my mom. She likes to cook, but she doesn't like to eat.
Yeah. But anyway, so, I've been lucky enough to kind of do a lot of different genres. So, I'm into country. I've done metal records. I've done funk records. I've done rap records. So the more I can kind of weave around, the less burnout I get. But I remember when I was doing a lot of metal records, I was like, okay, it'd be nice to, do a slow, mid-tempo ballad. Today.
What genre you wouldn't do? Like, is there something that you just like, this is really not my
Well,
cup of tea? Or you would look at it as, oh, this is really like challenging thing. I'm gonna do this.
I don't know. I like working on all sorts of stuff, but
Have you done
recently
any EDM or something like that?
EDM is not one that I've really gotten into. Funny enough, even though there's a lot of EDM production value in today's music, right? In fact, a lot.
Yeah.
Right. Recently, over the last couple of years, as over COVID and stuff like that, this whole conversation, oh, what am I going to do? Blah, blah, blah. I started writing a record.
Ooh.
So, what keeps me
What
going?
am I going to do? I got to find something other than music. Okay, I'm going to write a record.
I'm going to write my own record.
I'm going to
Yeah,
become an artist, honey.
I need a backup plan. Plan B. And it's going to be
thought
a
of it.
jazz record.
Duran's gonna drum on it. It's gonna be awesome.
Oh, it's so funny.
No, but
I can help you mixing phones.
thanks, man. No, so I started I mean, really, it was more a very a very selfish thing. Just really, I was like, oh, fuck it, I'll make a record. I mean, I know how to do that. So I started.
You better do.
I started doing, it's essentially a jazz record, kind of a jazz funk record, and so I started writing a record. So that goes back to, we were talking about like what keeps me going. That's the passion of it. I still love doing that. Even on the way here, I did a song last night at 11 o'clock. Me and my wife had a couple glasses of wine. I was like, fuck, I gotta go record something. There's something in my head. I gotta go do it. She's like, oh, you fucking go do it. So I threw down this demo in like an hour or whatever, and I was listening to it on the way here on like stun level in my car. I'm like, this is fucking awesome. Right? And but that's what it's all about, right? And that's forget all the rest of it, the music business and accolades, this, that, and the other. It's like that's what it all comes down to.
You just
right?
love doing it.
You just love doing it, and just like, I don't know. It's just something that all of us will always do in one way or another, right?
Okay, so now a follow up to this question.
Yeah.
Would you want your kids to go into the industry?
Fuck. Yeah, I mean, I would totally support them, sure. Hopefully by that point, the industry will kind of be a little bit more stable than certainly over the last 20 years. Remember I said, like, there's, in my what's relatively short career compared to, the lifespan of the music industry, in the last 20 years, we've seen the industry literally shit the bed twice. Once with streaming, and then we didn't talk about COVID, but then the same thing. It was like these two massive upheavals in people's livelihoods. So, I mean, of course, I would. I would totally support them. Yes, absolutely.
Would you say, because we keep talking bullish or bearish, would you say you're bullish on the music industry as of now? Would you say it's a positive outlook?
Yes.
Or are we just still headed down?
I would say so. If I for my kids, if I was to say to get in the music business, I would definitely say that getting a business degree or at least some kind of, I think a business degree would be the way to go, because these days, as you guys know, is you have to run the show yourselves. It's not like the old days when it was done for you.
Totally.
Yeah, it is super, super important. And the more you know, and I struggle with this all the time, like, I have managers and accountants and things of that nature, but the more you know about what's going on, the 1,000% the more successful you'll be. That's a big one. I think it's more important today in the music business that you know that shit.
It's almost like the music becoming secondary in here.
Well,
It's like it, when you find the balance between the passion.
Well, it
you
is
have
called the music business, right? And most
industry,
and
or-
most artists, like, that's where they get stuck, right?
Mhm.
And I'm sure you guys have felt that along the way. It was like, at some point or another, you're like, okay, I really need to learn this shit, because, and just like you were saying before, like, constantly there's just something else you have to learn, like something else you have to figure out, and it's and the business part is, art. It's arguably as important as the creative part, because if you don't have both those things happening for you, you're fucked.
Or also, if you don't know how to do the other part of it, you don't want anything to do with it, then someone else is just going to take all of that money from you.
100%.
Gladly, happily. Like, merch is a good example of that.
Yeah.
Like, labels will happily take their merch.
Yeah.
But I think what artists is like, oh, okay, I don't have to do any of this? Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, you forgot.
Actually, not cool, dude.
Yeah, you forgot in the
Yeah.
contract that they're now going to take 85% of your merchandise,
Yeah.
and you're forgetting the fact that merch is probably going to make you 50% of your entire business's money.
Yeah.
Like, so it's Django looks like you got you. Django's like, I got something here.
I think a lot of the artists might feel like we're gonna be the 21 Pilots, and we're gonna have so much money that we're not gonna care about merch. We're gonna be so famous, we're so sick, and We're just don't have to worry about this because the millions of dollars we're gonna have.
Yeah, that's like the blinding lights of the industry, and I feel like we went through that exact same thing. Like when you get signed by a major label, you're like, oh shit, they have XYZ artists on their roster. Oh, we're just right on our way to being there in no time.
Yeah.
And you're just like and then it's through the experience of understanding like, oh, okay, that didn't happen immediately. Okay. Well, now flip through Spotify and any of these playlists and see how many people have 1 million monthly listeners.
Yeah.
There is probably tens of thousands of them who have 1 million monthly listeners,
No.
or thousands of them, certainly.
So we are a number like 8,000 on Spotify.
Great, only
We're top
8,000.
8,000 artists in the world. We're American.
Okay, so we're say
pretty good.
top.
Still thousands.
So we're top 8,000, and for us, we're still just a very small business, like a very, very small business. So it's like the amount of other people that are also there to get now to the top 100 or 150. It's like an anomaly. It's
Yeah. So
and I guess if you get to that point,
make you enough money to.
Exactly.
I mean, it could, but if you're on a label, certainly not, right?
Yeah.
If the label taking 85.
But do you still
90%.
need someone who put this stuff up for you, right? Like we had TuneCore, and how much did they take? There's
No,
always
TuneCore.
someone who's gonna take a cut out of your pie. Like there's
They took very minimal.
yeah, the TuneCore takes nothing, but then unfortunately they also don't build you at
Yeah.
all, right?
Right.
It's
there's-
just complicated. Everything about it is complicated.
Oh yeah, and the music industry's always has had that illusion of grandeur that I mean, when you slice it down, you're playing the lottery, right?
Yeah,
that's
for
that's
sure.
where we're at.
Yeah.
we're fucking playing the lottery.
Yeah,
here,
we're all
boys.
gamblers. Yeah.
yeah.
You've just been a very good gambler for 25 years
Yeah,
now. Like,
yeah.
That's your next career.
and so like
Poker stars, here we go.
with the gambling, we've done with you the first RA2, you know, that was Brittle Bones Nicky, then now we had the baggage that's kind of, you know, creeping in. So what's on the third one? Now you should know. Now you should know pretty well for a gambler.
Hold on. So
You
many
work on
songs.
so much shit.
Recorded
It's
a lot
like
of songs, right?
We did
There's a
record
lot,
lot of
yeah.
songs.
I think it's
20?
60 songs or something you recorded with us.
But
Really?
RA4 we did
Well, like
20
I mean, like all together, but
We did
for
like
the
24,
last
yeah.
recording we've done with Ben.
well, I know the
34
two.
plus
Oh,
24.
yeah. So I said 2 U's and Money were
Yeah,
the,
exactly.
those are the ones that
Yeah.
I originally and still think were the big ones. But at the end of the day,
Who knows, eh?
The fuck
who
knows?
knows?
It's going to be tremendous.
Tremendous. That was another one though, right? A lot. You know, I will tell you something that I often do is I often play it for my kids
Okay.
because they have no preconceived notion of anything. They either like it or they don't. Right? Now, to be fair, most of the time they're like, yeah, I like it. Yeah, it's cool. But when they come back and say, hey, I want to hear that song, blah, 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 that's a good indication that they like it.
Okay.
Brittle Bones Nicky was one of those songs.
Interesting. Was
Except-
baggage one of those songs?
Except he called it, fuck, what did he call it? He still calls it to this day. It's like, anyway, I'll have to recall what he said. It's like some other, 3 other words of, that make no sense whatsoever.
And so was baggage the same as Brittle Bones Nicky?
No, Baggage wasn't one of those.
Okay.
No.
He like Mama Bear.
Oh, no, it was.
Yeah,
Mama
he-
Bear. Baggage was one of those. Yeah, it totally was, actually. Mama Bear was one. Fuck You Pal was one. For the only reason. See,
You
here's the
say
thing.
fuck, man. Like he's
If
a
you
kid.
say fuck in a song,
Yeah.
any 11-year-old kid will think it's the best song they've ever heard in their life.
Oh,
We have a lot of those.
Yeah.
Explicit is all our Spotify is explicit.
Yeah, Mama Bear you really like too. But yeah, so I don't know. I do that sometimes where I play it for the kids, and if they come back and ask for it. Hey Sunshine was another one.
Interesting.
Loved that one.
Actually,
Yeah,
that
I
song's
love it
not
too.
doing bad at all. I mean,
Loved
we thought
it.
it's gonna be the hit, but it's not the hit, but it's not bad. It's not doing bad. It's pretty good.
pretty good.
It's
Pretty good.
like, performance-wise,
Pretty good.
Totally. Well, Luba, you got any final questions before we? up?
No, I was just like listening to conversation and really enjoyed that, and I don't know, we kind of look at this one as kind of like a free roll a little bit, like have a band here, chit chat. Like we've done 3 records with the guy. It's not like this will not be like a 30-minute podcast like with the guy that we did 3 records with, you know. So like, sorry for everybody that listens to this and thought it's gonna like click in and out. Fuck you. You have to listen through all the shit. Maybe Ben has a question for us.
Oh, what do you guys think is the next big hit for you guys? Do you have a?
We've been
Do
It
you have a
hasn't been written
forerunner?
yet.
We've been wrong every
Have you been
Actually-
wrong every time?
No, we haven't been wrong every time. That's not fair. But I would say what we've done, which is getting harder and harder to do, is like every time we'd record a batch of songs, we'd pick like 50 or 75 fans, and we'd do like it's a
Little
small
focus group
sample.
kinda
It's a
thing?
small sample size, but
Yeah.
at least it's like okay, give me your top 3 songs and
Yeah.
like your top 10, and then we'd look at that.
Yeah.
And almost every single time there was a direct correlation. Wow, Brittle Bones Nikki.
Mhm.
Everybody picked that song.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't even close.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
the second time it was Baggage and Rhythm Kitchen wasn't even close. So
Yeah.
we're like, okay, let's go with that. Let's roll with that. Let's use those as singles. Let's put some money behind those songs.
Yeah.
But now it's like harder and harder because everybody's leaks everything.
Right.
And whether like I don't know how much you like we care about that. Someone posts something with 4 subscribers on YouTube, maybe it doesn't matter, but
Mhm.
I also think that the more you do this, the more you're like you start to become like, oh, they're gonna leak it. It's like we almost feel precious about it or something. It's like maybe we should just say fuck that and throw caution to the wind and do it. Obviously, it worked. But I always find just it's so challenging
Yeah.
to pick songs. Like I don't know. I mean, like moving on. I remember like from the second that song was written, I was like, I just really like this song.
Mhm.
Feel like it's just a good song.
Super relatable.
Super relatable. It's a good song. Felt we had a pretty clear vision for it. So I don't know. This is one of the second song we're taking to radio, which is literally just starting this week. So we'll
Which
see.
one? Moving on.
Yeah. So we'll see. I have no idea. Like I feel like I just have no expectations in that area anymore. It's almost like you need like pixie fairy dust a little at some point too. You just need I would say that's actually an interesting part. We've talked about this before is that I think a lot of like any of the success we've had has just come from like grunt work. It's just been from grinding and like putting a lot of shit out there and trying to do all the steps and just doing our very best to be creative and try cool ways to put songs out there and interact
Yeah.
with fans and stuff. But I wouldn't say we've had like a lot of luck. Like we haven't had like that. This popped on on an app, or some DJ at a station really likes you guys and really like this song, wants to reach out, or some celebrity caught wind of this song and posts about it, or
Yeah. It's all
just
been
like
hard work.
yeah, any of those little pixie dust kind of moments that you're like, oh, fucking give me some of that shit, you know? It's like catnip or something. I don't know. We just haven't really had that much of
So
that.
you're saying you're due.
Please. Oh man, I wish. I feel like moments like that are like they're also like really re-energizing, I would say, for the whole crew.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing when you work with a team for a long time, as we've all worked together for quite a while now. It's like moments go a long way. You know, it feels like you're like, it's working. Something
You
we're
can
doing. Like,
only milk a moment for so long, eh?
yeah,
you
like
need more
moments, they
moments, you
go,
need
but
more- yeah,
but
yeah.
they're good. Like even today, we did that merch drop that we all spent a lot of time and effort and a lot of creativity on crafting out there, and like it was like a resounding success of like we could have never predicted that in a million years. Like sold more merch today than we have for the whole year.
Oh, really?
Like-
good.
No, not more.
Not
We
more.
sold half of the merch today
Yeah.
than we sold for the rest of this year.
Crazy.
Yeah, half
That's
of
great.
revenue in literally one day, like just an insane success.
Yeah.
And we could have never predicted that. So things like that are just like you're just like fuck yeah, like
This is like, yeah, it's because when you release songs and they're streaming good, then they go down a little bit, and you're like looking at like same stories, different stories
Yeah.
happening. When you have moment like this, when you see like your merch went up 7,900%, you like feel like
I'm gonna drink a beer. It's oysters on the half shell tonight, baby. Like
So we kind of like we definitely had success, especially the tour. I think it was nobody expected. Not that nobody expected, but we didn't know what.
I mean, the
what
first
we-
tour was sold out, so it was
Yeah,
kind of
we
like
sold out the first tour
Yeah.
completely, and Europe was 80% sold out. So pretty
Yeah.
much sold out too.
Yeah.
So, and the fun we had and the fans and everything was that's something that pumps you, that makes you like.
but it resets your standard like clock now or something.
Yeah.
It's like, we could have probably, if the first tour there was like 100 people at each show, we still probably would have been like, fuck, that was fun. All right, next tour 150, boys.
After playing Stadium,
Yeah, and now it's like
Bratislava, I'm just like,
or you go to
I'm not
Pink-
playing 150, 200K. I'm like, fuck
You go-
that
It's
shit.
like flying a private jet, right?
Yeah,
you don't
yeah,
want to fly a private jet too early because it just ruins flying for the rest of your life.
Yeah, you go to like you
So
go to
funny.
you go to Pink Pop Festival and Lubo's fucking getting his massage, and then we're going and eating like this gourmet buffet, and then all.
Zara Larsson talking
I can,
to us.
I can easily skip 250K for the rest of my life. Just I don't need it. It was fun. Cool. Next one, Stadium. I like that.
Yeah.
You know?
So anyway, it resets your I would say your expectations.
For sure.
Now you just want more and more and more and
More
more, and
festivals.
small little things. You're like, fuck that, man. I want
Yeah.
the big the big success. So
But that's the passion and that's the drive that's what it's all about,
for
yeah.
sure.
That's what keeps us going in this crazy fucking business and world, and
Yeah, and it's fun. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like we're all fortunate to be sitting in a room where it's like you still have passion for something, and there's a million people and way more that wish that they could do what we do,
Mhm.
and to put out ideas out there, and a lot of them fail, some work. So I feel like sometimes you can't lose sight of that, and you have to kind of remember, okay, sure, there's periods of that go down, and it can be a little bit of a roller coaster, but that's kind of the charm in it as well,
Yeah, it's definitely. I worked in 9-to-5 job for 6 years, and this is like, it's quite the opposite of 9-to-5 job. We go here 9-to-5 or 10-to-6 or whatever.
Right.
You go home, you think about it. There's a weekend, the kid goes to bed, and you work on something. So it's like, with the other 9-to-5 job, it's like, I'm gone. I'm not thinking about it at all until
Right.
Monday.
Yeah, that's the biggest difference I find is like,
And
yeah.
even though like the working hours in the music industry might be 9-to-5 or whatever you call it, there's never 9-to-5. It's your life.
Well, it's kind of an entrepreneurial way of looking at things, though, right? And certainly the music business has become that more so than in the past. It's entrepreneurial. Like, you don't just switch off. You get out of it whatever you put into it, and that is as entrepreneurial as it gets. And
But even you, man, you've been doing this for 25 years, and you were like, my wife and I were having a couple glasses of wine last night at 11 p.m., and I'm like, no, I must go record this idea right now.
Yeah.
I can't possibly park this for an evening. I have to do this this second. Like, you've been doing this for 25 years. Like,
100%.
It's just, that's what it is. So it's like, hours are one thing, but I find it's just like the mental side. It's like you're just, no matter where you are, you're probably, it's somewhere in the back of your mind,
absolutely.
Anyway,
And
all
so,
right.
No, I have
Okay.
one last question to kind of finish this up, because there are 2 more beers.
One more.
One more beer for Ben. Okay, whoever wanna grab the last one. So like,
You want that, right?
I kind of like to ask the question because it's interesting. So what would
I'm
you?
on the edge of my seat.
What would you like tell to a younger Ben if you meet like a 20-year-old Ben running around the street now?
Band or younger Ben?
Ben, like
Oh, okay,
you.
okay.
Oh, a younger me?
Yeah, I thought you said younger Ben.
younger
Okay,
you,
a
Ben,
younger Ben.
B-N.
Oh,
Yeah, this is always like a.
Well, I mean, short of what I did say before about the business thing, I think that's a really, really important thing as a, as an up and coming artist in whatever fashion or form. I think that's something that you need to address pretty fucking fast. Is get the business side, get a really good understanding of the business side as soon as possible, because that will only help and further your career. Don't party too much, That's what I would have told myself.
You do not strike me
Don't
like a.
party too less, but don't party too. Just keep
Party
it
enough.
between the lines, bro. Yeah. yeah, I think that, you know, and other than that, like, you know, I wouldn't have changed too much in my, you know, I don't look back and there's nothing I would necessarily change, but I think any artist that asks me for advice or you know, young producer or something like that, that is something that I do say to them often is get your business affairs in order as soon as possible.
Okay.
That will alleviate a lot of stress moving forward in your life.
And what do you mean by business affairs? Like, if you had to break that down.
Business affairs, your taxes. Learn to do your taxes properly. Learn what, you know, where revenue comes from in the music business. What different revenue streams there are. Neighboring rights, royalty. You know, all the royalties. Like all these things. Like the more you know about that, you know, like there was for a few years there where there was royalties that I was earning that I didn't even know about. Right, from playing keyboards on people's records or whatever, right? And I didn't even know about them, and until, you know, I ran into somebody, I was like, oh, you should check in on this because there's probably some money there for, and sure enough, there was, right? No idea.
Yeah.
You know, because there are a lot of ways to, you know, monetize the business that are already done for you, but if you don't know about it, like there's a fund that. And it's just like unclaimed royalties, and it's just like fucking millions and millions of people that just have no idea, right?
Yeah, totally.
You know, it may not be a lot of money, but in some cases it can be quite substantial, right? And in some cases people just don't, you know, have the either the ability or the, you know, or the willingness to do the work to go get it. And that's why you have these third-party companies that were like, hey, I'll go get your royalties for you for 20% or whatever, if you want. And you're like, and you know, you either do or you don't, but you just got to learn that shit. And certainly these days in the music business, the more revenue streams you can figure out, the more successful you're going to be. I mean, in the old days, like, you could just be a producer, you could just be an engineer, just be a guitar player, but it seems like these days you really have to have a lot of hats on to really make things happen, right? As you guys know.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, those were the words of wisdom from Ben, Jamesy.
Good words.
Good words.
Not bad words.
Not bad words. Well, thanks for coming.
Oh, my pleasure, man. I just when you called me, I was like, oh fuck, I'm sure we'll do a call. I just want to fucking hang out with you guys. But yeah, you can record it, sure.
We'll all hang out with you, man.
Pretty much this is our talks from the the hippo, but recorded.
This isn't any different than every day.
Yeah, this is what we got when we go record an album with Ben.
Yeah.
We just had like an hour and something with that.
Yeah. Sit around and shoot the shit. I love it.
Okay, we got to finish half our beer, so I have another question.
Okay, Jens is good. Okay,
well,
it's not ending.
Well, how is it when you work with artists and then they work with another producer? How does that impact you, or how does that make you feel? Or
so there's
he needs to keep up with the producer before, right?
There's always a certain feeling of somebody's fucking your girlfriend.
Okay,
right?
It's just inevitable. You can't.
Yeah, somebody's fucking your ex-girlfriend. But at the same time, it's like, and I suppose if I suppose early on there was that, and then that feeling of, oh, I hope it just fucking sucks. You know what I mean? I hope it sucks and nobody hears it. But the truth of the matter is that does absolutely nothing for you.
No, it's the opposite.
It does the absolute opposite. Yeah. Whereas if you, I mean, there's still always a little bit like, fuck, you know.
I wish we had this on camera.
The good stuff doesn't make on camera. That's how it usually is.
I hope he gets her pregnant, and then you know. But the reality is, like, you really want whatever happens in that artist's career to be on an upwards trajectory, because anything that happens in a positive manner is only going to reflect
it boosts
well
everything
on
else.
You. Mm-hmm. So, you know, Mother is a good example. They've worked with all sorts of producers, right, along their careers. And then, you know, and I've done 2 records. I've done tons of live stuff with them, all sorts of stuff, right? The thing is, I still work with them in one way or another. I haven't done every record with them.
Yeah.
But I still work with them no matter what. Like when they do live stuff, they'll call me sometimes and this, that, and the other. So you still, nurture those relationships. And the thing is, as if, something happens, now they're a little bit of an anomaly because it was actually one of their first or second records that was the one that,
Popped off,
which never happens. But anyway, but all that does is boost, it boosts sales, it boosts visibility for me. It, oh, mother, like, oh fuck, I'd
Who
love to work
recorded
with
that?
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all that does is boost everybody that's been involved. And I mean, at the end of the day, like, what are you gonna do? Like, like, hey Ryan, I heard your work with Gavin, and I'd like you to go fuck yourself.
I hope it sucks.
Like,
I'm gonna post about it on Facebook.
no. And then the funny thing is, like, like most of the music business isn't that big, right? Like, it really isn't. So at some point or another, like all the producers that, in Mother's case anyway, all the guys that have done records with Mother, I know all they're all my friends.
Yeah.
Like all of them are friends of mine. And we all prop each other up, right? And it's it just like in life, right? Like if you conduct your life in a way that you want to knock people down around you, there's those people around you, those toxic kind of people that they get off on kind of knocking the people around you, and then you have people in your life that try and prop everyone else up around you. Those are the guys, and or girls, of course, that are successful and happy and go places.
It's like high tides raise all ships or whatever.
100%. So, at the end of the day, it's, we're all trying to figure out how to take this ship up to the next level. And sometimes sometimes you make decisions that work, sometimes you make decisions that don't. But at the end of the day, I've been doing this long enough that it doesn't really bother me. I know that any band is just trying to make it happen. And, whatever I can do to facilitate that is part of my job as the greater team of said artists. So, yeah. But there's still that little part of me, that is like, you fucked my girlfriend and I'm going to fuck you now.
Collab with Chin on Burgos Inc. 2 was just outstanding. So sometimes you can merge these two worlds.
Totally. Like, and with Chin, I've known that guy for, like 20 years, right?
That was really fun.
Was that the first time you ever worked with him?
Like really worked together, yeah. We've been in like jam circles and
Gotcha.
Been in studios together, over the years, but in a real like, okay, we're actually doing something here.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah, I think one thing from like the artist side that's interesting is like just to learn people's totally different ways of approaching things.
Yes.
Like you work with you and then you work with Chin and or vice versa. It's literally, you couldn't be more different. It's like you're cooking two totally different cuisines of food.
Yeah.
And I think also as an artist, it's good to learn those different cuisines, so to speak, because the more of those cuisines you kind of know and understand, the more you can kind of borrow flavors from each one of them. Yeah. And I think if you only cooked one your whole life, you probably could be missing out on your almost ultimate potential because you didn't realize that you could borrow from these different schools of thought kind of thing, Yeah. And, everybody, I think in your position, you all do things so differently. Mm-hmm. Even from going from Joe to you guys do things totally different. Chin, like, everything's different. And then we just did some songs with this guy, Tim Randolph, who was like just a fucking wild man. Like, he was just a wild man. Like our sessions were pretty like, all right, we're coming, we're showing up, we're doing our fucking best, and where it's like you wear like a schedule kind of thing. This guy's like, where's the fucking mushrooms? Like,
It was 20-year-old Ben that did.
he was like, give me the mushrooms, and I'm fucking like, I don't fucking want to hear your demo. I have no fucking interest in hearing your demo. Don't fucking play me your demo. And you're just like,
James started playing some ideas from his iPhone and he left the room.
he's literally like mad at me that I was just like, I'm just trying to remember what the song was. I wasn't trying to close your ears. You know what I mean? Like,
but to the all fairness, like those songs that we made with the guy, just like they are really, really good songs.
yeah, they're just different. Yeah.
Remember what I said though, like it's
Yeah.
you know, there's something to be said about, you know, spending 2 or 3 months like honing your craft and massaging the song, and you know, like let's spend a day getting the coolest kick drum ever. Okay, so there's something to be said about that, but there's also something to be said about forgetting all of that and let's just fucking guerrilla style bang this song out, and whatever we get at the end of the day is what we got. You know?
Yeah, there's a little bit more like that. And so anyway, you're like, okay, this guy's clearly different. Like he's just a different cat. Well, then you lay something down, and he's a little bit more in the box, but also a very good player.
Yeah.
Very good traditional player. So
Yeah, right.
you know, you'd lay something down, and fucking 9 clicks of a button later, and you'd be like, the fuck did you click, man? Like,
What is this?
where did this come from? Like, what sort of gypsy fucking weird crazy shit did you like?
Yeah,
what
it
are
was
these
wild.
plugins? Or are these like? And then you're just like kind of like, whoa, like it was just bizarre, almost like kind of mind blowing. And then I know, and then several songs later, you start to figure out the process a little bit, and then you're like, okay, I kind of understand his process now a little bit. So now I'm like, okay, now the next batch of songs, you're like, okay, now I kind of understand how this guy approaches things.
Sure.
I understand how you approach things.
And you
how
take
Chin
things from
approaches
all
things,
that
and,
shit, and then that all
how
becomes
Joe approaches
Sure.
things. And it's like, I think even as a band as well, it's like, okay, now you go and you all learn from somebody totally different. It's like you're going to school again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I would say that's good, I think, as an artist. Versus, and I'd love to do another record with you at some point for sure.
Yeah.
But if we would have just gone and recorded with you again for the 4th time in a row or whatever,
Yeah.
I think all of us, we knew the process. We
Yeah.
know how it goes. It's like, okay, we know what to expect. It's almost like you almost need a bit of a left turn to figure out,
Sure.
okay, whoa, we're relearning again. And then we figure out, okay, this is what we love almost from each person. Then the next time you go to record, you're like, I want to sprinkle this in for sure because I thought this was really cool, and I want to borrow from here. And yeah, ultimately it's
When
So the lesson learned, Ben, more mushrooms.
more mushrooms. I don't have a problem there, but when younger engineer producers ask me about how to get in the business, right? There is, you know, traditionally a few ways to do that. One is to, you know, be a runner at a studio. One is to be, you know, maybe a second for a producer or something like that. And there's pros and cons to both, right? So you may end up working for a producer and, you know, maybe that said producer is very successful and you have a pretty stable gig, but you're only really getting that one way of making records. You're doing pretty well, you know, you're getting a good paycheck, this, that, or the other. But, you know, the flip side is working at a studio where you've got a constant flow of engineers and producers coming in, right? So you get a taste of all these different cats that come in with all these different, just like you said, everybody's got a different way. So, you know, I have a few friends that have done both roads. And the ones that have, you know, done the studio realm where it's just a constant flow of different producers and engineers, maybe it took them a little bit longer to get where they needed to be, but the amount of knowledge that they were able to take from Dean Marr, you guys know Dean, he's a great one. He worked at all sorts of studios. I mean, he's worked with all sorts of
he used to say
producers,
he'd like
engineers.
come in on the day and he'd be like, okay, you're working on Barney today.
Yeah.
And then the next day it'd be like, okay, you're with the metal band over here. And you're
Yeah.
just like, holy fuck, man. Like, okay, I guess I'm in this. Like, I just got to figure it out.
Yeah, but you learn so much.
Yeah.
So you end up being such a you know, being able to deal with any situation. And, you know, and same thing. You just pick all the best things from all those situations. And
Yeah, one thing, like, I feel like I learned maybe that I feel is, like, recording vocals.
Mhm.
I would say, like, I like teeter-totter between like comping a lot and doing multiple takes of a verse or doing whatever more punches, I would say.
Mhm.
and then doing it in this way, or more, I think Joe Ciccarelli, or the first record, was more like this too. It was like, sing the song 6 times in a row.
Right.
And sing it start to finish.
Yeah.
And I'm looking for the most raw. I don't give a fuck if it sounds perfect. And then this way was even probably more so like that. I would say that, like, what I liked about it is, like, we didn't do vocals. We almost didn't do them. It was like, okay, I need a vocal here at this point. Okay, go take the mic now. The speakers are on, doesn't matter. Okay.
Pretty much.
Yeah, no, there's like, there's whatever. It's like, okay, go. Just shut the fuck up. Just go. Record it. Okay. Okay. Then you're like, all right. There's something about, like, just being in the moment of that you don't necessarily care if you're perfect.
Yeah.
Or if you're like, oh, I hit that beautifully.
Yeah.
It's more like, I was just in it at that moment. I was thinking about it, and you have the raw energy of that. And it's almost like that is like the thing. It's like the sacred thing that you want to harness, and however you can get that. And it's probably different for every vocalist.
Sure.
But however you can harness that is, like, to me, that's almost like the sauce, you know?
Well, think about all the times that we've done vocals, and then during the mix, you'd be like, you know what, fuck, man, like, I kind of like the demo vocals better. And
Sure.
it's like, okay, great.
Yeah.
When we were doing the last Mother record that I did with them, you know, Ryan does very, very good demos. And one particular song was very much about, you know, a breakup, basically. And when he sang the demo, he was literally like...
In it, yeah.
Like, in a dark fucking apartment by himself, like tears running down his eyes kind of thing. And then, you know, we set him up in the booth, and it's a beautiful mic, and the sun is shining, had a nice coffee, and I was like, all right, man, like, sing about how, you know, your whole life fell apart, would you? All right, man, I'll do that right now. Thank you. And he got about, like, you know, 2 verses in. He was like, I can't fucking do this, man. I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, we'll just use the demo. It's good.
Yeah. Makes sense.
But that's totally it. I mean, we've done records where we've set up PA systems in the studio because, you know, it's a rock and roll band, and, you know, putting headphones on and putting a mic, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
All right, here's a fucking 57. The fucking PA's going.
Go.
And same thing. Fucking blast off. Jägermeister, very good. Here you go. Let's go. You know, and then same thing. Sing it 4 times, and that's all we need.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it depends. I mean, I often will take the lead from the vocalist on that. I've worked with vocalists that literally we're like, la, 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 7 out of 10 on that one. Do it again. Blah, 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 you know, and almost produce themselves as they're doing it. So you got to kind of, you know, figure out
like
whatever
so
works. You know?
The favorite thing about the vocal recording was when James was singing it, and Tim is like not feeling it. Grab a guitar and pretend you play.
Yeah, totally.
And James was like standing there, pretending to play guitar. Yeah, that's it.
That is a total
I think
thing.
we have that on video.
More stupid shit you can get artists to do it better. You know? Stand on your head. Yeah. Okay, that's it.
Whatever it takes to get the job done, you know?
Totally. What a fucking wild art form, man. Literally whatever it takes. But that's just fun.
Yeah.
It is. That's why we do it.
There you have it. This is it. Bye.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.